Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date and help the channel grow. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And now, on with the show. You are listening to the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion with the one and only Gray. Greetings, opinion nerds. It is I, the one they call Gray, and today we're looking at the raucously silent Hollywood of old with director Damien Chazelle's Babylon, coming up right now. Sometimes it's the experience that matters most, opinion nerds. Human beings like to believe we're significantly different from the rest of the world's fauna. We believe we're more intelligent because we developed the hula hoop, learned how to make a bouncy, viscous goo that can pull the ink off of newsprint, and sent people flying off the planet strapped to what amounts to little more than a bomb with a rudder. But humans are not so much more advanced than the other creatures that live, shit, and die anywhere above or below the surface of the earth. One of the most prescient similarities is that, like the salmon or the moth, we're instinctively drawn to things by forces we can't understand. In humans, among other things, we often find ourselves drawn not to the place of our origin or to a candle's flame, but towards dreams. Dreams we've often built up in our collective consciousness until they become impossible to resist. These dreams can motivate us, nurture us, and sustain us. But like both the salmon and the moth, they also threaten to destroy us. You can try to realize a dream, you can try to escape into it and hide from the world, and you might be able to for a while. But eventually all dreams come to an end, and each of us will have to either face the waking world or disappear along with it. Three people on different rungs of the ladder in 1920s Hollywood bear witness to the rise and fall of an empire of light in Damien Chazelle's Babylon. Written and directed by Chazelle, the film stars Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Diego Calva, Giovanna Depo, Lee Jun Lee, Lucas Haas, Gene Smart, Eric Roberts, and Flea. Now, not to spoil the party, kids, but there may be some spoilers ahead. Looking back at the Hollywood of the 1920s is like looking back at a lost culture from another planet. Barely in its infancy after the first films began production in the areas in and around Los Angeles in the early 1900s, Hollywood attracted people from all walks of life in all corners of the world. Film was a relatively new medium for storytelling, and the art of cinema was being created on the fly every moment of every day. It was an industry hungry for talent and hungry for innovation, and the people it attracted were hungry for any and everything. The myths and stories to creep out of the period paint a picture of debauchery that would make even Johnny Depp blush. The degree to which any of these stories is true is impossible to know at this point, but many of them have passed well beyond the value of truth and into the realm of legend. Babylon, probably a shortening of the title of writer Kenneth Anger's 1959 book Hollywood Babylon, one of the first attempts to compile and chronicle many of these myths, is a film built on the backs of these legends using very loose analogs for some of the real-life people to amalgamate many of the tales into a single experience. Babylon isn't so much the story of the emotional journey of its characters as it is an attempt to convey a sense of the period, to transport the audience into some approximation of the chaotic energy of the time as the first wave of Hollywood's silent film empire gave way to both the talkies and a push to clean up its image for a public becoming increasingly cold to the hedonistic allure of the world beneath the Hollywood hills. The film's plot is mainly comprised of four intersecting tracks following our three primary characters: wannabe star Nellie Leroy, played by Margot Robbie, aspirational but alcoholic leading man Jack Conrad, played by Brad Pitt, and starting from the bottom industry innovator Manny Torres, played by Diego Calva. And the fourth track is the arc of the industry itself as it transitions not only from silent films to sound, but from the roaring 20s into the pre-war Americas. While the film covers the rise and fall and fortunes of these characters, it also tells a broad tale about the shift in American sensibilities in the time between the Second and First World Wars, including subtle changes in its social attitudes vis-a-vis topics like race and sexuality, exampled by the characters of Giovanna Depo's star bandleader Sidney Palmer and the not-so-mysterious Lady Fei Zhu, played by Lee Jun Lee. None of these stories are deep dives into the lives of any of the characters. There's far too much to do and far too little time to spend spelunking them in total. Manny may be the closest thing the film has to a central character as we begin and end with him, and even his story feels like little more than an overview. What the characters really allow for is a peek into the different facets of Hollywood at the time. We don't follow them so much as they allow us access to that world. It isn't that their stories don't matter, but their stories aren't theirs. They belong to dozens of performers and professionals who are not only unable to make the transition to the new form, but who found themselves pushed out of the business when their proclivities and vices became incompatible with the new, wider, more morally acceptable face the industry wanted to paint for itself. This isn't likely to go over well with audiences for whom following characters is their primary way of engaging with film storytelling. Because the characters are pastiches of so many real-life people and their particular situations so broad in scope, it can be difficult to find any singular thread to grasp onto. Robbie's Nellie is probably the closest the film has to an emotional draw, as she is easily the most damaged of all the characters. But while the movie does touch upon the issues driving her, the film isn't about her struggles and only spends so much time exploring them. Likewise, the underlying causes for Conrad's alcoholism and implied womanizing are given less focus than his frequent insistence that film can, and should be, a high art form on the level of theater and great works of music. And while following the thread of Smart's gossip columnist Eleanor St. John reveals both the close collusion and antagonism between the filmmaking industry and the industry that arose to cover it, it too is just another opportunity for a brief overview of how intertwined the two have been and probably still are. But the point of the film is not about who was fucking over who, either literally or figuratively. It's not about whether or not the industry is inherently corrupt or hypocritical, as the morals clauses that sunk many stars' careers were not applied to the people who actually ran the game. It also isn't about whether or not what was seen as an artistic enterprise sold out its creative integrity for mass acceptance in a changing world, sacrificing more than just ideals in a move that was arguably responsible for keeping it going during World War II and beyond. The point seems to be that no matter the reason, all these people came to Hollywood in search of a dream, whatever that dream might have been for any one of them. For a little while, all of them, those dreamers, became part of the dream. But as St. John points out to Conrad in one of the film's standout moments, that dream doesn't belong to any one person, and the best anyone can hope for is that you'll continue to be part of that dream long after you've taken your final sleep. What it appears Chazelle is really trying to get to is an impression of what it was like to live and work in those crazy, chaotic times. The real meat of the film is the immersion into the insane spectacle of the party life and the chaos and tragedy of the industry process. It's in these areas where the film really shines. Directed to an upbeat, sometimes madcap tempo that slows as the period wanes and comes to a stultifying halt during one of the film's most painfully funny stretches, Babylon is a spare-no-expense production whose immersion never feels artificial. Its Gatsby-esque opening party sequence is an overwhelming experience led off by the first of many well-executed long-moving camera takes. Cinematographer Linus Sangren helps shoot a strong but relatively mid-contrast film that feels natural and, perhaps unsurprisingly, a little ugly and unromantic. This is no doubt helped by shooting the movie on celluloid instead of digital, a choice whose creative and emotional impact on a piece of work still can't be overstated. Hollywood might be a dream, but the reality that made that dream work isn't always pretty. Now, I'm not going to lie and say the movie doesn't begin to feel its length at a certain point, and it can be confounding trying to find the emotional thread through it all if you're looking at it from an individual character perspective. What I tried to concentrate on was the bigger picture of the experience, and I have to say that I laughed and gasped my way through the majority of the film in a very good way. There are definite shades of films like the Coen brothers' Hail Caesar and the afore alluded to Gatsby. In fact, I felt a clear aspiration towards a Lerman-esque style frenzy at times, though the film never reaches that director's candy-colored fantasy heights. Did I care about any of the characters in specific? Not really, but I don't think it's the job of a film to make you care about the characters. I feel like I understood the characters. I understood what they wanted and why they wanted it. I guess you could say I cared for them insofar as I felt some sympathy for those whose stories ended tragically. But beyond that, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to invest in these characters that other people seem to think one should. To be honest, I haven't exactly processed my feelings about the film, as I'm not really sure I feel a lot about it. I think it's a great piece of storytelling. It's very effective in creating an experience and conveying the points it wants to convey, but it didn't really leave a lasting emotional mark with me. It's extremely well executed, but it's not a hyper-stylized or fantasized presentation that really emphasizes the emotional side of the experience or blows you away with its visual panache. I was very entertained by the film, but I wasn't specifically moved by it. I'm not going to walk around quoting it. I think this is what people really value from a film, a sense of a personal connection to the characters or the material. How well the movie is made isn't specifically important to most audiences, and I understand that. But the film is getting clanged on from critics who treat how well it's made as if that should be a given, and it very much should not be. Did I fall in love with the movie? No, but I don't fall in love with every good-looking person I meet either. It doesn't stop me from acknowledging their attractive qualities. And Babylon has a number of attractive qualities. It's well produced. It's consistently directed, even if it isn't aiming for super creative heights, and it's full of great performances. I enjoyed it, and I feel like I understand it. So Chazelle and company have done their job in creating a communicative piece of work. I'm not sure exactly what I'm supposed to note is missing to the point that I talk down to the film as if it wasn't made by multiple Oscar winners and nominees. We used to consider the appearance of movies that change your life a once-in-a-lifetime pleasure. Are we now expecting that to be the norm? Can't we just celebrate a film existing as a well-made film? Babylon isn't trying to demystify Hollywood, as the illusion of the industry has long since been shattered, and its performance with critics in the box office serves as an example that movie stars no longer shine bright enough to attract an audience like so many moths. It's a movie about the insane high and somewhat epic crash of the industry's first real empire. Not the facts of it, but the feeling from its elephant-shitting insanity to its creatively stifling transition to the call to either conform or be cast out. The historical Babylon wasn't destroyed, it was conquered, and so too was the Hollywood of old and the dream that it represented. It just became a different dream with different rules and different limits. But the dream still attracts because at the center of the dream is the promise of your heart's desire. As long as that dream burns bright, people will be drawn to it. See, in the end, we're not so different from the rest of the animals. We're all instinctively drawn to something beyond our understanding. It's possible we may actually be the dumbest animals on the planet, though, because, unlike the salmon or the moth, we're more than willing to kill ourselves trying to get somewhere that doesn't really exist. This has been the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion. As always, I have been Gray, and if you like what you heard, you can leave a tip at our Ko-Fi page at ko-fi.com/notthepopularopinion. You can follow us on Twitter at @only_Gray, and don't forget our main page at notthepopularopinion.wordpress.com, where you'll find more great articles just like this. Thanks again for listening, and remember, if you're as good to others as you are to yourself, we might just make it through this mess. See ya.